meeting is being recorded.
Okay, good morning, everybody. We're going to keep giving people a chance to come in, but I want to welcome everybody. We are recording this session so that we can make it available on our YouTube page for those who were not able to join us this morning. Thank you, everybody, for being flexible as we needed to move this to a virtual event, particularly thanks to our candidates, because I know this is not quite as easy a format to follow virtual as it would be in person, but we appreciate everybody's flexibility in these crazy times. I'm Jane Rediker. I'm President and CEO of the Greater Silver Spring Chamber of Commerce, and I want to welcome everybody. The leadership of our chamber really believes that we have an obligation to encourage our members and their member businesses and their employees to take an active role in elections and to vote. We've been working to create opportunities for our members to learn more about the candidates for whom they will choose our next local leaders. Today, we'll hear from 4 candidates who are seeking to be the nominee for county executive in the July 19th Democrat primary. With us this morning in order are David Blair, Mark Elrich, Peter James, and Hans Reamer. And for the audience, the agenda this morning will be giving each candidate an opportunity to make a 1-minute opening statement. Then we have a series of questions that were developed by the chamber leadership that we'll pose to each candidate. And depending on the questions, candidates will have 1 or 2 minutes to respond. Asking the questions today are the current chamber chair, Bill Commoners from Lurch, Early and Brewer, and our incoming FY23 chair, Mike McCartan, owner of Joseph W. McCartan Insurance. And with our questions, we're going to begin in alphabetical order, then we'll proceed down the line and change that with each question so that each candidate will have the opportunity to be the first to answer at least 1 question. And so candidates, for our audience, we've told our candidates that so we can get back to the business of running our businesses, we're going to be strict about time. And Courtney from my staff is going to give the candidates a 30-second prompt when they have 30 seconds left. And then she'll also call time when they've reached the end of their time. One last detail for the audience, Julie on our staff is going to be monitoring the Q&A. So if you have technical difficulties or anything else, you may please contact us through the Q&A. So let's begin with our candidates' opening statements. Mr. Blair, we begin with you.
Good morning. Thanks for joining this Zoom early Thursday morning. So I'm a lifelong Montgomery County resident. And no doubt I was blessed to grow up here with our terrific schools, our wide open places, and the welcoming and inclusive nature of Montgomery County. My mom was a public school teacher, and she used to say to me, David, when a door opens up for you, it's your duty to reach back and pull the next person through. Well, a door did open for me through business, success in business. And so for the past 10 years, I've been devoted to working with nonprofit organizations, advocating at the state and local level to move our county forward. And because I've seen it slipping, whether that's schools, affordability, or jobs. And so that's why I'm running for Montgomery County Executive. But I'm so incredibly inspired by this county because while I'm from here, we've attracted the best and the brightest from all over the country, from all over the world. And we have the funding, and what we're missing is executive leadership. It's how I was able to build a Fortune 500 company here. And that's the leadership that I'll bring to Montgomery County to move us forward. And I look forward to our discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Elrich.
So good morning, everybody, and thanks for doing this virtually, as encumbering as that might be at times. I appreciate being here, and I just wanted to let you know, when I first came into office, I joined with Councilmember Sidney Katz, and we did a listening tour of businesses. We decided before we started changing things, we actually wanted to hear from people who were most unhappy with doing business in the county. And out of that tour came a number of things. We've made major changes to our procurement department to open up bidding and opportunities for more county businesses. We actually preference county businesses. We made changes to permitting, and we continue to make changes in permitting as new issues arise. But we've learned to be flexible. We've taken a customer-centered approach. We make sure that projects are being highlighted, particularly when they're priority projects. And there's a very different approach to what we do. We've reformed procurement because we have now increased transparency. You can actually track procurements online. And this budget has been a real benefit for the county. We maintained our AAA bond rating. We fully funded our pensions, but for the first time, we have 10% in our reserves. So I'm optimistic looking forward. Thank you.
And Mr. James.
Okay, I guess I was muted there. Yes, my name is Peter James. I grew up in the county. I actually grew up in Silver Spring. I graduated Springbrook High School. I'm the only county that's going to take us into the future. All the choices that are being made are looking back, and these are choices that don't work. We've seen the entire county's traffic light system go out because they didn't bother to put redundancy in. I have a plan right behind me for downtown Silver Spring, rather than running a purple line to take people between Bethesda and Silver Spring. The personal rapid transit I would build would be a 100-mile network that would get everybody from around the county to be able to get down to Silver Spring in 20 minutes. Silver Spring, the Central Business District, has 2 opportunity zones. I would go out and find the unicorn startup companies and build a $1 trillion economy in Montgomery County using bringing us into the future with leading edge technology. One thing is a digital. Let me know if I'm out of time.
You're out of time.
You're muted.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and Mr. Reamer.
All right. Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Hans Reamer, and my wife Angela and I live near downtown Silver Spring, and we're the proud parents of 2 kids, and they're students in MCPS schools. One's going to be a high school student at Blair, and one at Tacoma Middle next year. I think it's about time we had a county executive with kids in the schools. You know, our kids have never needed us more, and we have an education crisis. We have a mental health crisis. Our kids are getting priced out of Montgomery County. They don't have enough career options here. And I've been on the council for 12 years now, representing our entire community. I know the whole county, and I've worked with communities all across our great county, and I know how to get things done. I think we can make this county much stronger and a leader, but we need elected officials who are going to make progress their priority and open our schools, keep them open safely. Have vaccination requirements for county employees, get more affordable housing built, get solar built all across this county. We've got to take action. And I want my kids to be safe when they're walking around downtown Silver Spring by themselves. I want us to feel safe when we're out as a family. And those are my priorities. And I look forward to working with you to get them done.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, gentlemen. And now we will start with our questions, and I'm going to turn to Bill Commoners to get the questions started. Bill?
Thank you, Jane, and thank you all, gentlemen, for joining us this morning. Mr. Elrich, the first question comes to you first, and that is this. The Silver Spring Central Business District was envisioned to become a smart growth, live, work, and play community. However, in the past 10 years, Silver Spring has evolved into a primarily residential neighborhood, a bedroom community, with virtually no commercial office development since 2005. The one exception being one particular business, United Therapeutics. What's your plan for bringing more employers and jobs back to Silver Spring in order to revitalize and re-energize our daytime economy? There's 2 minutes for this question.
Bill, that's a really good question. I've had pretty strong feelings about, what was done to Silver Spring. First of all, I think the CR zone, where you could do either type of project, was a mistake, because what it incentivized is people making quick decisions for what they might do in their property quickest, rather than what would fit the actual master plan for the community. So if you have a central business district and you're trying to focus on businesses, then you need zoning that favors commercial property over residential development in the downtown. And that was a mistake. I mean, most central business districts are anchored by commercial zoning. So we've lost opportunities when residential projects go up, especially close to the metro, which are prime sites for commercial projects. People often look elsewhere. I know we've heard that before from businesses coming to Montgomery County saying there's not enough stuff within the quarter-mile radius of some of our metro stations. So I would have looked differently on how we zone things. And I would certainly not continue in the current plan, the lack of a preference really for doing businesses, at least within the quarter-mile ring. Fairfax County is a lot smarter than us. In the Tysons area, the quarter-mile ring preferences commercial property development over residential property development. The second quarter-mile ring preferences residential development over commercial development. The premise of that is the basic sound thinking that the walk shed for commercial property is about a quarter mile and the walk shed for residential is a half mile. So you position your residential outside, slightly outside the core, and you position your commercial inside the center of the core closest to the metros. But we're going to continue to bring businesses into Montgomery County. And we've been really aggressive in courting businesses. Even now, we funded a study for the former Calder property to bring in a company that wants to do biomanufacturing training on that site. We're always trying to we've been very active in trying to bring companies into Montgomery County. And I think the host said time.
Yes, you did. Thank you very much. Mr. James, turn to you.
Yes, as I mentioned earlier, I will we're developer focused economic development, and that has limited effect. What I will do, I talked to one of the building owners in the Central Business District, and he said they're looking at 25-30% vacancy rates. So the first thing is fill up those buildings with not large companies that aren't going to grow, but small companies that are going to grow into unicorns, the billion, trillion-dollar type companies. I'm a tech guy. I know all the target companies to go quantum computing. I know which quantum computing companies have viable technology, something called generative design, microfactories, all these things I can bring in. And the advantage of the two opportunity zones in the district is that all the capital gains, if held 10 years, are tax-free. So this is a huge carrot for people that want to become billionaires and not have to pay any taxes. So I will bring, and those businesses will generate 100, 1,000 times what some of these other businesses will do in the district. Thank you.
Thank you.
Am I done? Was that 30 seconds?
You have another 30 seconds.
Okay, yeah. So one of the things I will do is bring in these personal rapid transit systems. For $1 billion, I can put a 100-mile network across the county instead of having the light rail and the BRT that just doesn't go where people need to go. So these are vehicles that can be driven on streets, and they go on to autonomous guideways. The richest man in Asia just bought a personal rapid transit system. He didn't buy an articulating bus company, nor did he buy a light rail company, because he knows that is the future of transportation.
Thank you, Mr. James. Mr. Reamer, on to you.
Thank you. Is this 60 or 90 seconds? Sorry.
120, 2 minutes.
2 minutes. Okay, great. All right. Well, thank you so much for this question. It's one that I care a lot about. And I think that Silver Spring has made a lot of progress. You know, in the last 15 years, it has gone from a moribund and in many ways blighted area to one that is quite vibrant and has a lot of a very high quality of life. At the same time, while we have succeeded with many aspects, we have lacked progress with commercial development. We have not succeeded in attracting significant new tenants or new office buildings. So we've got one half, that's really working well, and another half that's not. And I think the reason is really a regional reason. You want to know where the companies are that might have located there? They're in the Dulles corridor. That's the bigger problem. And I think it's one that's affected all of Montgomery County, with the exception really of downtown Bethesda and some spots on Rockville Pike. There hasn't been a lot of new office development in the county. We need to turn that around. We need to get motivated here. And I think the county executive's comments are exactly the wrong kind of way to think about this. He just said we shouldn't have had all the residential development in downtown Silver Spring. We should have had restrictive zoning that prevented that investment from happening. That's what's killing Montgomery County. It's that mindset of let's restrict the private sector and not allow it to do what it wants to do. Thank goodness we got the residential development in downtown Silver Spring. It's what's working. What we need is the actual commercial development too. And those two usually go together. but we've got bigger challenges. On the positive side, it's the purple line that is our opportunity here. The purple line has 4 stops on the University of Maryland's campus. It comes right into downtown Silver Spring, and then it connects right into downtown Bethesda. It's not far from the NIH. It's adjacent to NOAA. It is an engine of our success and our future opportunities. Quantum computing is growing right there. It was partially invented at the University of Maryland. It's the largest computer science degree granting institution in the whole country. So if we can't turn the purple line into an engine of our prosperity and a source of success for Silver Spring, then, shame on us. County Executive proposed single track.
Thank you. Thank you.
Your time is up. Your time is up.
I'm having trouble with keeping up with the chat. So a wave might be helpful, by the way. Just a comment on the timing issue.
Sounds good. Mr. Blair, on to you.
So great question. Thank you, Bill. So when we started our business in Montgomery County, I didn't have a perspective of whether it was easy or difficult to do business in Montgomery County. It was only when we grew and we had offices in 30 states and thousands of employees that I realized how challenging it was to do business in Montgomery County. In fact, it was the most difficult. And I'm not exaggerating when I say that. And it wasn't one thing, it was everything. It's why one of the things that I did when I announced my candidacy, I put forth a business bill of rights, like the things that businesses can expect, which really levels the playing field with surrounding jurisdictions. Because you bring up an excellent point, right? We need a thriving business community in Silver Spring to support the restaurants, right? That daytime lunch crowd, those types of things. What's really alarming is while the elected officials that I'm running against have been in office, we've seen the number of Fortune 500 companies in Montgomery County drop to 2. We just have 2 left. Meanwhile, Fairfax is at 11. I don't know if you saw the news this week, Raytheon, they're moving to Arlington, right? So we've got to change the culture here. I think I have actually unique insights on exactly how to do that, what the businesses are looking for, because we got to get that economy going. I think specifically when I think about Silver Spring, we've got to be able to build on Silver Spring's potential as an arts and entertainment destination. I think we can partner with developers to build artist studios, an arts district centered on a new Silver Spring performance venue. I'd love to have a 5,000 seat venue. We can also have our high school graduations from around the county there. I would look to bring a world-class gallery and museum at the historic Blair House, at Jessup Park there. So that's certainly one thing, but just all the businesses, the small businesses, because that's really the heartbeat of our county, and we've got to do more to support small businesses. I'm out of time, but hopefully I can elaborate that more on additional questions.
Thank you.
Good morning, gentlemen. We appreciate you all taking time to join us today. Mr. James, you will go first, and gentlemen, we have 2 minutes for the next question. Many of our small and medium-sized business members feel that the policies adopted by county government reflect a lack of appreciation for the contributions they make to our community. Please describe your understanding of the difference between the challenges faced by large multinational companies and small locally owned and operated businesses. For example, the county requires small business owners to pay recordation tax when they use their personal home as collateral for a business loan that is more than $3 million. Yet large business owners don't have to personally guarantee anything, let alone put their personal property at risk for access to capital. Please provide specific examples of how you will support small business and ensure opportunities for them to grow and expand. 2 minutes, Mr. James.
Yes. Well, first of all, I'm going to give you all a homework assignment. Go Google the VIR Bank, WIR. For 90 years, businesses in Switzerland have gotten together and issued interest-free loans. And this accounts for and it circulates as a currency. And this accounts for over $2 billion worth of transactions in Switzerland. The Swiss know about money. The second thing, I'm a small business. The small business set aside only applies to small contracts. We were one of the finalists to redo the entire county's transportation system, but they didn't give us any kind of preference. So they went with the guys they've been working with currently, the Siemens. And so I would extend the set asides to local businesses for every contract. Also, we have a 311 system, which is horrendous in the day and age where we have same day delivery on Amazon orders. I'm going to set up what's called a digital twin, another homework assignment. Google or go to my website, pjames.us, and find out what digital twins are. Basically, they're SimCity games that you can get online and see exactly where in the process. I'm going to put all the work and process for the county online in an augmented reality, so you can actually see why it is your permit's being held up. Let me look at my time, 30 seconds. I've experienced all these things that small businesses go through in the county, and I will fix them and create the county that's the best place in the world to live. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. James. Mr. Reimer?
Reamer, thank you so much. Appreciate the question very much. First of all, I come from a family of small business owners. My parents own and run a small financial planning business. My sister started and runs a restaurant. It's in my blood. I've worked in small businesses and I've been raised in them. And I know that it is more difficult, that when you're a small business owner, you're much more on your own than large businesses are. And Mr. McCartan, you probably don't know this, but I'm a client of yours. I brought my business to your company because I want my personal dollars to support our own local businesses. And it matters. It matters. We all need to do that. I know that our local businesses face tremendous obstacles from our county government. I don't think we have a culture of getting to yes, of the customer is right. That's the central tenet of successful business, is the customer is right. And I think Montgomery County government my dad taught me that. Montgomery County government does not have that mindset when it comes to a business's need to get through our processes, our permits, our licensing. And I don't think the county executive has been effective at all in making significant changes the way that are needed or the way that was promised in the last campaign. So I also don't think what we heard from Mr. Blair has any ability to move the needle. I mean, I'm a big fan of the Jessup Blair House, an historic house in a park. Having a gallery there isn't going to help Silver Spring, achieve job growth. Give me a break. So we need some more effective thinking here about what it's going to take to get us going. And I think I want to bring us back to the purple line. The small businesses in Silver Spring will thrive when the economic environment in Silver Spring is growing, when we're filling up those office suites with employees who can dine and shop in the retail and services environment. We need to help the whole of Silver Spring succeed, and the purple line can get us there. And I'm going to get the purple line done right so that Silver Spring can get that lift and really take off.
Thank you. Mr. Blair?
So the difference between the large multinationals that you described and small local businesses is literally night and day, right? The larger companies are going to have access to capital markets, they're going to have legal departments, and they're going to be able to navigate their way around, whereas a small business can't. And we saw this through the pandemic, right? How small businesses struggled with PPP loans or PPP grants. And I think the chambers really stepped up in a very powerful way and helped those local businesses. So we've got to do everything we can to support small businesses. It's really the backbone of the community, as I was starting to say in my last answer. And as we think about, if we want to have more Fortune 500 companies here, it's going to become, if we have thousands and thousands of small businesses, some of them will grow to be mid-sized businesses, and some of them will be Fortune 500 companies perhaps someday. So when I think about better supporting them, one, clearly procurement is a huge opportunity where we can support these businesses. And you've got to be proactive with procurement. You've got to go out and seek these businesses, right? Because oftentimes a small business owner doesn't have the capacity to be, cruising through websites to find bids. And so if the county is aware that we're spending money outside the county, we've got to search for those businesses and be proactive. One of the businesses that I'm aware of in Bethesda, they sell salad dressing. One of their biggest clients is DC Public Schools. But Montgomery County Public Schools doesn't buy their salad dressing. Just think about how, if we could work with the school system to buy local, how that would spur our economy. So I think about procurement, but not just from the government's perspective. We need to have a strong Montgomery County brand and support all local businesses. Because I think in our DNA, we want to support local businesses, but often we don't know what those local businesses are. So if you were to come to our campaign offices, you'll see one wall has all Montgomery County made products and promote the services. Because if we're all buying from each other, it's probably the fastest way we can get this economy going. And that's one of the things that I would do as your county executive.
Thank you, Mr. Elrich.
Oh, okay. So, the question started with the tax that was referenced, and I would certainly look into that. This would be one of those places where I don't feel the need to levy a recordation tax when a business is taking a loan in order to support its growth or its survival. So that's something I'm happy to look at right away. I don't believe that's necessary. I feel the same way about solar. We've already had conversations that if we get people putting solar, for example, on their parking lots, I'm not interested in taxing the solar in terms of increases in property tax value, because our goal is to get solar, not to get additional taxes. And so if I get a net gain in solar production, the tax issue is not something I'm concerned about. In general, I've run small businesses. My first business, I made furniture. I got a loan from the JCC, when I was, probably in my early 20s, and I opened up a business making furniture in Montgomery County. So that's where I started, and I've worked for a number of small businesses as well as for a large company. So I have a background in this. Some of the things that we've done, I think, are important. If you were to talk to Marriott or a bunch of life sciences companies that we've worked with, or a company like Matin, where we're working with them on speeding up the pace of bringing labs into Montgomery County, our people are doing a very different job than they used to do. We do pre-meetings first. We make sure people understand what they're going to need to do in Montgomery County. Marriott talked about the fact that they can make a call to people and get actual answers from people and have people actually get back to them when they needed to get back to them. I had a call from a state senator who had a company that had experience in Montgomery County, wasn't sure they would do their next building here. I called them up and I assured them that they would be able to get through the permitting process expeditiously, and they did. I met with CBRE the other day and a bunch of Montgomery County developers, and their number one issue with speed is park and planning, not permitting.
Okay, so I have a quick follow-up. It'll be a yes or no, and we'll go in the same order. The District of Columbia requires its small business vendors to be DC-based businesses. Prince George's County has a robust program to give preference to local businesses. While Montgomery County has a program that gives preference points to local businesses, much of the county's money spent on small business vendors goes to businesses located outside the county. Simple yes or no. Will you support a preference program that requires county agencies to choose Montgomery County-based businesses unless there is no local business that provides the needed service? Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. Reamer? Mr.
Sorry.
Blair?
Yes, that was a yes, but there's some legal complexities here, just to be careful.
Yes.
And Mr. Elrich?
Yes.
Thank you, gentlemen. The third question, starting with Mr. Reamer. Excuse me. After the hard push that you made to support it, it seems that our heralded nighttime economy has extended into more of a very late night economy that has some unintended and undesirable consequences. In recent months, Silver Spring has experienced a dramatic increase in violent crime, which threatens our economy, our business owners, and our residents. What is your plan to assure safety in our community? Specifically, would you support legislation that requires mandatory closing times for restaurants that are operating as bars and nightclubs, as well as for hookah bars? And would you support bringing on more police and adding a new police station or a substation in downtown Silver Spring? Why or why not? You have 2 minutes for that question.
Thank you so much. Well, first of all, I want to thank the business leaders who reached out to the county and pounded the table to get action in downtown Silver Spring. We had a summit several months ago, and it was clear to all of us that the executive branch was being flat-footed in its response to the epidemic of crime in downtown Silver Spring, as well as the specific challenges around late night entertainment. And, I think we have to manage that much more assertively. We don't want to be victims of our success in downtown Silver Spring. It's great that Silver Spring has become a cultural attraction and destination, but you have to be really vigilant about excesses. And I don't see why businesses should be open at 4 a.m. And I think we're hearing about a lot of violations of, sales, illicit activities. And I think that has to be managed really, really closely. I think we need to breathe down the neck of those businesses and make sure that they're following our rules. And if they can't follow our rules, then they should not be open that late. That, pure and simple. We need to have an adequate police presence. When we heard from the district commander, he said that they had, I think it was 4 officers for the late night beat, and they were way understaffed. And it really took that concerted push to get them to move units around and staff up that downtown Silver Spring beat. I think that's unacceptable. It should have been in place already. So you got to have an adequate police presence. You got to have participation. We did learn that the police department was not in any conversation with those business owners. That was a mistake. We needed to have that collaboration. I don't think those business owners want crime committed on their premises or associated with their business. That hurts them too. So let's get everybody working together here and manage this situation. Is that time?
Thank you. Yes,
Okay,
thank
thanks.
you.
Mr. Blair, on to you. Thank you.
So specifically, as your question, Bill, about closing times, yes, I'm certainly in favor of that. And I think we need to think more. I think we need to think more of a regional approach when we think about this type of thing, right? Because it's too easy for residents to move from, Prince George's County or Washington, D.C. to Montgomery County. And so it's entirely predictable what happened, right? If certain establishments are closing at 4 a.m., but they're open till 6 a.m. here, that's what's going to happen. We saw it through COVID, right? When we went to, closed indoor dining and Prince George's was open for indoor dining, we saw Silver Spring restaurants lose takeout business to Prince George's County. And that can't be safe from a health perspective, right? So I think we need to very, very much take more of a regional approach when we think about these decisions. And so that'd be something that I'd be very much in favor for. To your question about crime and safety, yes. This is probably your number one job as your county executive, right? Is keeping the public safe. And so no doubt we need to continually improve our policing, and there's things that are underway, right? So whether it's more, mental health, mobile crisis units, more de-escalation training, doing a better job with the diversity of our police force, we've got to improve our policing, but we also got to keep our residents safe and making sure that our chief of police has the proper funding to do that. And when we cut close to 30 positions a year ago, and we disbanded the auto theft unit and we reassigned school resource officers, that was concerning, right? And so we need to make sure that our chief has the proper resources to keep us safe as it relates to the substation, the station in Silver Spring. As an executive, I'd very much look forward to working with our chief and his staff to understand, is that the best place for it? And if it is, absolutely, I would be behind that.
Thank you. Mr. Elrich?
I'm glad you mentioned the auto theft unit, because actually that was the chief's decision. I certainly don't get into operational issues at the police department level in terms of telling them what units to operate and what not to operate. And it was his decision and his belief that he would be more effective if he had decentralized it. Just want to make that point, because a couple of you say we should give more authority to the chief. So I want you to know that, sometimes even chiefs make decisions that don't work out the way everybody thought they would. I think, that we've been really robust in what we're doing in Silver Spring. I think there is an issue with nighttime businesses. I know there are council members who are interested in legislation. Not all council members have been helpful on this. Some people do not want us to restrict the hours of businesses, late hours of businesses, but we're going to support the proposal that I believe is coming forward from a couple of council members to curb the late night hours for some businesses, actually for pretty much all businesses. I think that, we are now doing a study of adding another police district. It has always been one of my concerns that the districts in the county were too large. If you met with an officer and they showed you what their beat was, their beats are enormous. And it was little wonder that it's hard for officers to be present everywhere then a beat in Silver Spring could stretch from Burtonsville all the way down to Silver Spring. So they are going about a change. We will get an additional beat out of this. If that winds up with a Silver Spring centric beat, then there'll be a station that'll be associated with. There's a substation in Silver Spring, I think people know, that operates above the firehouse there. And they're able to work out of that space, but it doesn't have all the facilities that a station would have. In general, we're going to continue to put the resources into Silver Spring that we need. It is meant pulling resources sometimes from other parts of the county. I will point out that 2 years ago, I submitted a budget to the council that called for increasing police pay. And we were very clear. We were losing our ability to retain police because of the pay, and we needed council support, and they would not give it.
Thank you. Mr. James?
Yes, I think there's a lot of things we can do. First of all, we need to, particularly places that are more of an urban setting like downtown Silver Spring, we need to put police on the street. And we don't necessarily have to put police with guns out there. I was at a restaurant right in downtown Silver Spring two nights ago, and 4 officers showed up with guns to confront an elderly lady. And certainly we could have had maybe a mental health person down there. We can use AI to optimize the triage system and the deployment of our officers much more equally. So I put officers, take them out of the cars, put them on the street. I definitely think we need in those a full station down in Silver Spring, but we need to be able to have the funding to do this. So by fixing and getting rid of the transportation boondoggles, I will save the county $8 to $9 billion, and that can be used to do some of these things. We also need to shut down those hookah bars, because from what I've talking to people, that seems to be the biggest driver of the incidents that we're running into, and certainly cut back the hours. When I grew up in Montgomery County, we had to go down to Georgetown to have a nightlife. And now we have some nightlife here, and that's good, but we don't necessarily have to have the extra late hours where people start to get overly drunk, and we get people from other jurisdictions coming in looking for ways to cause trouble. How am I doing on time there? So I would look at the British system, where they have unarmed officers that work the beat, and then have a high-speed triage system to get the responders that are needed for each incident.
Thank you. Mike, on to you.
Mike, you're up.
I'm sorry. Mr. Blair, this will start with you, and there will be 2 minutes, gentlemen. The Route 29 corridor in eastern Montgomery County has suffered from a lack of commercial and other development for many years. Few, if any, new employment opportunities have been created to provide jobs that would address complaints about traffic congestion, that is, taking employees to Silver Spring or on to DC, or bring economic prosperity to this area. What is your plan for bringing new businesses and jobs, not just more housing, to the East County / Route 29 corridor? 2 minutes, Mr. Blair.
So White Oak is probably the biggest economic opportunity that we have in Montgomery County, with 300 acres, and we have a plan there, and we need to get this done, right? There's, and I think this is where true leadership comes in, right? True leadership is when you don't have direct authority, you don't have direct control, but true leadership is when you bring a diverse group in, you listen, you try to figure out what is the win-win? How do you make a win-win out of this? And then you set that vision, and then you execute and get it done. So White Oak has to be a priority. And then transportation along 29, which you mentioned. We proposed, our BRT was proposed, bus rapid transit was proposed 14 years ago. We've built 14 miles since then. You don't need a calendar or calculator to figure out. At that rate, we'll never address the public transit needs that we have. So for sure, when I think about 29 south of New Hampshire, we need to have a dedicated lane, or else we're not going to get folks on to the BRT. And again, kind of going back to my last answer about region, when you think regionally, I think it's unrealistic to expect people to drive from Columbia or Maple Lawn to Burtonsville and park their cars and get on a bus rapid transit. We need to think about how we can extend that so that it's more effective. So that's how I think about it. I also think a really unique role that the county executive can play is in Annapolis. And so when I met with many of our delegates over this past session, they all did a very effective job bringing money back to Montgomery County. But it was in the $5, $10, $40 million chunks. And then I look at what Angela Alsobrooks did. She brought back $2.6 billion, including $400 million for along Blue Line, right where FedEx Field is. They're going to build an amphitheater, a civic center, a library, a market hall. And so we've got to be thinking about how we can leverage our relationships in Annapolis so that we can get that kind of investment and spur that growth that we so desperately need.
Mr. Elrich?
So we've done a number of things pretty aggressively. I mean, first, I personally got involved in the 3 economic development projects that were stuck because of approval processes, the one at the Gateway on New Hampshire Avenue, Mark Solomon's project in Town Center, and also the Burtonsville project with Edens. In all of those cases, I got involved. I was able to resolve the issues between, the regulations that are mired between park and planning and our own Department of Transportation. All of those projects are moving forward. You see dirt moving at New Hampshire Avenue. You see dirt moving in Solomon's project. And Edens is going to announce both a grocery store, and we've got a housing developer who wants to put housing on our parking lot up there and provide the structured parking, which will help support the center and also support BRT. We've worked with Howard County. Howard County is interested in expanding BRT up at least to Columbia. They have a study that says they could bring it up to Ellicott City, and it would be a substantial improvement in traffic. And so we're going to work with them and work with them in the state, and hopefully a Democratic governor who will actually invest in this kind of project to bring more money in so this project can actually get done. This county has never had the capital to do these projects. This is why these projects get stuck for 14 years, because if you're going to build a project that's going to cost a few $100 million, or, if the whole system is north of $1 billion, you have to be able to put together a funding package you can do that with. With our current structure, we can't do that. We don't have the ability to put together those packages. Virginia uses a different taxing system. They use special taxing districts instead of impact taxes. I've talked to the development community. I'm very interested in adopting Virginia's system rather than Montgomery County's system. The big advantage, I talked to both Jeff McKay, who's the head of the Board of Supervisors there, and Sharon Bulva when she was there. The different tax structure enables them to bond against the tax revenues. It actually doesn't cost developers more, but it produces more flexibility for the county.
Thank you. Mr. James?
Yes. First of all, to see how BRT just doesn't work, jump on the 29 flash bus. There's nobody on them. Pre-COVID, we saw we're experiencing less and less ridership. These personal rapid transit system and a 4-foot lane can carry 5 lanes of traffic. The advantage of the personal rapid transit, these are just electric cars. The problem with a single corridor is you really need a network. All the businesses and residents are lateral. So down Randolph Road, Fairland, or whatever. So you can, when you get to a stop, you can get behind the wheel of these things and drive it on to your home or your business. And this would open up that whole corridor to get people, rather than taking 40 minutes to get from Silver Spring, we're talking 15, 20 minutes. So fixing the transportation system. And I wouldn't focus, you notice that our county executive keeps rattling off these big names, Marriott's and CRBE. I would focus on the small developers and look at spreading things out. People live up in the up county because they don't like urbanization. And so I would look at spreading the development out. And in order to do that without having that big traffic mess, you need something like personal rapid transit to make it successful. And we have the second worst traffic congestion in the entire nation, and I will make us the best transportation system in the entire nation. So I don't have my glasses. I can't see my time. So somebody wave at me when I run out of time. And look at Burtonsville. It's basically a ghost town. I went up there to ride the. Okay, I'm done.
Thank you. Mr. Reamer?
Well, thank you for that question. The prosperity of the East County is one of the county's most important challenges and obligations to ensure, because the East County has been left behind by the anti-development vision of county leaders for decades. Several decades ago, there was an idea that you could lock it in place and it'd be perfect forever. And then transportation infrastructure was removed. And what happened was a gradual decline and a lack of economic investment and vitality as the area became more and more isolated and distant from job growth. And we need an executive who's going to turn that around at the big picture and at the small picture. And our current executive sent us a substandard plan for bus rapid transit on Route 29. The county council had to send it back to the drawing board to get it right so that we could actually have a high quality infrastructure. We need an executive who's going to help this county become more successful with economic development. What we have is an executive who fought against 5G and wireless, who tried to propose single tracking the Purple Line, who is anti-housing, who is fighting against expanding the American Legion Bridge in 270, who has publicly talked down the East County's success with the Viva White Oak prospect, development adjacent to the FDA, who isn't making real change in permitting and processes. So all of these things add up. And we need more pragmatic leadership in this county that's going to put the whole county first and not just, pander to certain political influences. And that's what's hurting us. We have a gradual decline in our job growth and in our workforce housing. And when we turn that around, we're going to see the East County and Silver Spring rising as well.
Bill, to you.
Thank you. Yes, sorry. This next question is a 1-minute answer. So just to be ready, we'll start with Mr. Elridge. And that is that there are many ways that people get to work or to play. Many of our members tell us that they see the BRTs working, but they don't see a lot of people in them. So efficient access by car is still very critical to the vast majority of Silver Spring businesses, for their employees, for their vendors, for their customers, especially those who are no longer young. They're not going to ride bikes and scooters. Some people can't use public transit because they can't walk that far, or what they've purchased is too heavy or too big to carry. So please describe your approach to finding a balanced transportation system that is safe for those who use public transit, travel by bike and on foot, and acknowledges and accepts the fact that many must travel by car and need sufficient lanes and parking options to do so. For 1 minute, beginning with Mr. Elridge. Thank you.
In the built environment, and it's not just Silver Spring, adding additional lanes to bring more cars into Silver Spring is not even a remote possibility. What you do need is to actually make the rapid transit system work, which in the case of the 29 corridor means getting rid of the congestion south of New Hampshire Avenue so that the buses run in a dedicated lane. The proposal that I was saddled with is something that came from the previous administration, that it kind of watered down the BRT because of a lack of funding. I'm glad the council rejected what they sent over. I also told them we were going to have to change it. We need to put in the system the way it needs to be built. It's got to be attractive enough that a choice rider will say, I want to use this. You need to put in place modifications of the ride-on. Once the BRT is running, you need to modify ride-on routes so they turn into feeder routes for the buses, that smaller buses go into neighborhoods, pick people up, bring them to the BRT, and send them on their way to the destinations in Silver Spring. We can do that. Roads aren't going to get you there.
Thank you. Mr. James, up to you.
Yes, and BRT doesn't. BRT was great in the 80s for Bogota, Colombia. Like you said, the design to actually have their stops wider apart and most people, we have to solve the last mile. Personal rapid transit does exactly that. It goes to where you want to go. It's on demand. It comes to you instantly. It never stops on the way down. So it's faster than traveling by car because it doesn't stop at lights. It doesn't stop for traffic. So you're talking about a 15-minute ride from Briggs Cheney down to Silver Spring, not a 40-minute ride. And it goes, like I said, you get to a stop and you live a mile away, you get behind the wheel and drive it home. If you live in an apartment and you can't store it anywhere or charge it, you get on. It's like an Uber. You can call it up. Last year they passed a robot delivery law, so we can deliver the personal rapid transit pods to your home when you need it. So it's on demand. It's fast. It's the way of the future. We're seeing automated driverless cars have gone live in Phoenix and in San Francisco, and we can't afford to spend $3 billion. Thank you.
Mr. Reamer?
Yes. Could you repeat the question? I'm sorry. I got a little lost in some of the responses.
The question was, what's your approach to finding a balanced transportation system safe for those who use transit, bicycle,
Yes.
foot, and vehicles?
Right. I mean, multimodalism means multimodalism. It means that every option ultimately works. And, it's one of the reasons why I have been working hard to ensure that the American Legion Bridge can get the additional capacity that it needs, because there are a lot of people who live in Silver Spring and need to get to Tyson's for a meeting or for a job. I think that's really important. Generally in downtown Silver Spring, I think you got to have a place to park. But I think the issues in Silver Spring are generally not so much parking access. I think we've got that. I think the question is walkability, especially, sidewalks, being in good shape. So I think that we need all the options in Silver Spring. Yes, you need to be able to get in and park at the Wayne Avenue garage or any of the other garages so that you can go to your job. That's important. You need to be able to park on the street, but we need other choices too.
Thank you. Mr. Blair?
I very much believe in the balanced approach that you described. And the first thing I would mention is we need to make the most out of the infrastructure that exists today. And so we could be using like adaptive traffic light signals to make our roadways more efficient, right? So when I think about like Georgia Avenue leading into the Silver Spring Central Business District, right? If that was more efficient, we could turn that into like the Grand Boulevard in the plans so that it's walkable, bikeable. We could have a dedicated lane to make it more pedestrian friendly. Our ride-on buses, we actually own this, and ridership was down 25% in the 10 years before the pandemic. And that's because we haven't reimagined our bus routes. We haven't invested sufficiently in technology. I proposed 4 years ago making ride-on buses free, right? So the first thing I would do is leverage the infrastructure that we have, make it as efficient as possible, because we can make these changes much quicker, which will help spur economic development for Silver Spring.
Thank you.
Thank you. Last question, gentlemen, 2 minutes. Mr. James, you will go first. What do you believe are the 2 or 3 most important issues of concern to the business community, and how would you go about addressing those concerns?
Yes, getting customers to your business is a big concern. If you have a service business, you're making service calls, get your trucks out to your customers and back. I can save every person in the county 100 hours a year of their time, and that's what we do sitting in traffic. So solving that, having the best transportation system. I actually went to I went to the county and did a public information request on the ridership numbers that are way overblown for the BRT, and they've not complied with the law to answer those questions. So the digital twin technology, the ability for businesses to get online and get immediate responses to their needs, as opposed to calling this 311 system, which really is designed to keep the citizens from pestering the county employees. And we need to turn that around. I would automate all the business processes that we do and remove all that paperwork. I can knock 20% off of the cost of running the government. And then the workers then become customer services people to help the businesses along. And rather than, and we have a business is the enemy mentality in the government right now. And I would turn it into, how can I help you, sir, mentality. And as I got 30 seconds, so sorry. Yes, so and then the third thing I would like to see is use of something called an AI of generative design. So being able to, rather than relying on human beings, which have impossible problems, unless you're a Rain Man, you can't solve these design problems, whether it's zoning, development, and where to put things. Thank you.
Mr. Reamer?
Well, thank you so much. If we're going to get Montgomery County, get economic momentum in Montgomery County so that places like Silver Spring start to see a rising tide, start to see more private sector investment, more interest in building, bringing companies there and new office development, all those things that we need. We've got to get a lot of the big picture pieces right. On the positive side, we have a growing life sciences sector, and that can be an engine to pull our train. But it's not going to happen. We're going to blow it if we don't make a lot of other key decisions right. We've got to get transportation right. And that means being connected to Virginia. It means getting the Purple Line done right. It means getting Metro back to its level of ridership. We got to have more workforce strategies. We got to work better with the University of Maryland. We got to invest more in Montgomery College and MCPS career pathways to fuel our local companies. We got to have housing for the workforce. You know, people who work in these companies need a place to live. But one opportunity, I think, above all, is the Purple Line. The Purple Line connects the University of Maryland, the largest computer science degree granting institution in the whole country, right to downtown Silver Spring and then over to Bethesda. We need to make the whole Purple Line corridor walkable. It needs to be affordable. There needs to be affordable housing, and we need to attract companies. We need to work with the state of Maryland to incentivize companies to come here and build a whole innovation corridor there. It can be the future, a growth hub for quantum companies. There are so many opportunities when you think about it. And I'm going to get the Purple Line done right. Our county executive even proposed single tracking it into downtown Bethesda. I want to work with the state and get this and the private sector to make the Purple Line the real engine of prosperity for the future of this part of the county. And I know we can do it, and we're going to get it done.
Thank you. Mr. Blair?
So I think the biggest challenge for me is going to be changing the business culture in county government so that everyone in county government recognizes that it's a flourishing business environment that pays for our priorities, right? That if we need small businesses to be thriving, to pay for our schools, to pay for transit, to pay for affordable housing, that's really our tax base. And when I think about that business culture, right? So like access to capital, you know, we have programs in Montgomery County, but they're confusing. I was with a Maryland Chamber of Commerce president recently, and she said, when a Maryland business calls me up, I say, I can help them get capital unless they're in Montgomery County. That's a direct quote. Even things like the PPE grants that we did during the pandemic. I had folks that had businesses in Prince George's County and Montgomery County. And they said in Prince George's County, they were working double shifts to get the money out. In Montgomery County, we were requiring them to show like bank statements, canceled checks, invoices. It was almost like we were assuming that they were the bad guys trying to, you know, somehow they were going to steal the PPE money. So we've got to change the business culture because that supports all the things that we hold near and dear to our heart. And that's going to be a big job for me. The other thing, I think you said two things. The other thing that comes up a lot for me is labor. And it's weird, you know, when you run for county executive, on one hand, when I meet with employers, I see this desperate need for labor. They say whether it's healthcare, technology, the trades, restaurants, they need labor. And on the other hand, when I'm working with the nonprofit community, they're like, David, we need good paying jobs. And I think the county executive can connect those dots, can connect those silos and go from MCPS to Montgomery College to USG into actual careers, right? So that we can address that labor shortage. So looks like I'm about out of time, Mike, but thank you. Those are the two things that I would focus on.
Thank you. Mr. Elrich?
So that's a really long question. So I'll start with, with transportation. I mean, the reason I proposed bus rapid transit 14 years ago was basically to get the county ahead of Virginia. Transportation had been cited as one of the major impediments to economic development. I don't know if Bill remembers being at the meeting with the chamber back in Rockville, many years ago when I proposed and met the chamber and talked about this, because I thought Montgomery County had to get ahead, and that if we could build our transportation first, we would have an advantage over Northern Virginia. We were never able to fund it, as I said before, not because of people. It took 8 years to get park and planning actually to even put it into the master plan of highways. So that's something that's really important. And when that gets in place, then you reconfigure your entire ride-on system to feed it instead of maintaining these long looping routes through the county. We need an attitude of continuous improvement in permitting and procurement, and you actually can see that now. Our folks, when there's new problems, like when companies came to us and said, how do we get these chemicals to the 4th floor of a building because the building codes don't allow it? We're working on modifying the building codes, following what other jurisdictions have done to be able to permit that. Hans has a funny view of the value of the University of Maryland. I'll give Amazon as an example. When Amazon located in Virginia, they didn't locate there in Arlington because Virginia said, well, and you can get your workers to George Mason or to UVA. Virginia said, we'll put UVA and George Mason at your doorstep. And in fact, Maryland University opened up an 8,000 square foot facility there. That's why we're working with the University of Maryland to bring an artificial intelligence school to Montgomery County, to White Flint, where we're working with WMATA to hire a joint developer to develop the White Flint site as another life sciences center. We think doing that is the kind of project that'll lift Montgomery County up, put us back on the map, and say that we're serious and we're open for business. And we actually have to build affordable housing. We're not doing that now. And my time is up.
As it is thing. So, and now to close, we'll give you each 30 seconds to describe your vision for Silver Spring for the next 5 years. And we'll go in reverse order. So having just had Mr. Elrich, we'll start with Mr. Blair.
We're going to give you 1 minute for that. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
1 minute.
Thank you, Jane.
Everybody's been so respectful of the time up to now that we got extra 30 seconds for each of those. So there we go. Thank you.
Well, so I think we described a lot of our vision for Silver Spring today, right? So we think about how we're going to redo Georgia Avenue to be that boulevard, how we're going to spur the business environment, right? So I think the vision's been described. This is about execution. And there's been a lot of really good ideas that have been shared during this meeting this morning. But good ideas can be a dime a dozen. It's about execution. It's about actually getting things done. Because we have the talent in Montgomery County to do this. We have the funding to do this. But what we're missing is executive leadership. And don't just take it from me. Look at the people that are closest to county government, our county council members that are endorsing me, because they recognize we're at a critical moment in Montgomery County, certainly for Silver Spring, and we need effective executive leadership to move Silver Spring and the rest of Montgomery County in the right direction. Thank you again for your time this morning, everybody. I enjoyed the conversation.
Mr. Reamer, I'm sorry.
Well, thank you so much. I think Silver Spring has a bright future. I think that if we can get the Purple Line to achieve its full potential, for example, that Silver Spring is going to become a strong economic engine. And we just need to get focused on delivering. And I'm going to do that as your county executive. Downtown Silver Spring is very personal for me. It's my front yard. It's where I go with my family. And what has always made Silver Spring successful has been the sense that it's a place you can go to relax and spend some time, maybe bring your family and have fun. A few months ago, I took my son, my youngest son, to a movie at the AFI, and we went to get ice cream on Ellsworth afterwards. And it was the first time I've ever sat at night and not felt safe in downtown Silver Spring. We have to change that. Silver Spring has to be safe. We have a problem. And as county executive, I'm going to make sure that we get that done. And with that, I think everything else will flow.
Thank you. Mr. James?
Yes, my vision for Silver Spring is right behind me. The counties, the planning boards did a study for putting BRT on Route 355, and that study showed that by 2040, the auto traffic was going to be 13% slower than if they did nothing at all. Since 80% or more of the people traveling are going to be in autos, this is going to be a disaster. So for $1 billion, instead of spending $3 billion, these personal rapid transits will make us the wonder of the world. People will come visit us and they'll go back home. So watch the video on my website. That you can ride a BRT at Heathrow Airport. The PRT that was built in Morgantown, West Virginia in 1975 has not had a single crash in 47 years. These are super safe. They get you to where you want to go very quickly. These other guys.
Thank you. Your time is up, Mr. James. Mr. Elrich.
So I think a couple of things need to happen with Silver Spring. One, we're going to continue to try to bring companies to Montgomery County, like the work we're doing on Caldor. And our hope is that we're able to actually get people to occupy some of the larger spaces there. I'm optimistic that some of the developers who are doing work with Walter Reed in DC see Silver Spring is directly adjacent to them and an opportunity to grow things that are actually happening in the district and bring some of those activities over to Montgomery County. I think Silver Spring really sits poised as the gateway to FDA and White Oak. I think we kind of underplay the value of it, but the fact is that with a decent transit system between Silver Spring and White Oak, there's no reason why we can't bring companies that might want to be next to White Oak to Silver Spring as well. There's a lot of land behind White Oak that can be developed, obviously, but there's also opportunities in Silver Spring, and Silver Spring has the blessing of having the metro running through it, and that's really key. We're going to make sure that we make the investments we need. We're going to make sure Silver Spring's safe.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, everybody. I want to really thank the candidates for joining us this morning and for making it possible to do this via a virtual format this morning. We really appreciate that. I want to thank everybody in our audience who joined us this morning. We hope you learned a bit about each of our candidates, a bit more than you knew. Please make sure that you're registered to vote. If you need to check on your registration, please go to our website. We have an opportunity there for you to check on your registration. We also have county council races going on, and everybody ends up in a different council district this year. It's kind of funny. So we also have a way for you to find out which voting district you're in. But please, if you need information on registering to vote, please find it there. Please vote. Your voice counts. And again, thank you for joining us. And thank you again very much to our candidates for joining us this morning.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you all.
Thanks for having us.